Hi, everybody. This is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Genealogy, and I'm here with my good friend Karen Cirillo, who's agreed to help us find out how she found her roots and what she's been doing along with the rest of us. So thanks, Karen, for being here. So my first question is, what got you started on your Italian genealogy research?
It was actually two events, Bob, that happened very close together. So back in 1984, my grandmother passed away. And right after that, less than a year later, her niece, so my mother's cousin, also passed away. And most of my family background, my grandmother was a factory worker in Brooklyn, where my family's from. So was my cousin, all my grandmother's brothers, my grandmother's father, who came over from Italy. And they all had very tough lives and all died very painful deaths from cancer. The doctors told us it was from working in factories with benzene and other chemicals that, what happened to them occurred. And they were kind of the bearers of the family tradition. My great-grandmother, who came over with my great-grandfather from Calabria in 1900, both died before I was born. So my grandmother and my mother were the keepers of the family stories, if you will. And one of the things that I found interesting as I heard these things was, they were kind of fanciful for a little kid. I heard about how my great-grandmother's ancestors were all doctors and lawyers, and they were landed gentry, if you will, so they all had titles. And that's kind of a bit much for a 5 or 6 year old kid. You have a tendency to think that it's all a tale being spun for your benefit, and none of it's really real. But when my grandmother died, I decided to do a little more research and find out if anything that she told us was really true. And then when my mother's cousin died, I went to the funeral, and my mother happened to be talking to the other members of the family, and she asked them, for example, if they remembered any of the Calabrian dialect they heard as children. And none of them did. And my cousin's children, who were sitting next to me, we were all about the same age then, like 25 or 30 years old, actually asked, what's Calabrian? We're part Albanian, so what's Albanese? They did not know a thing about where they came from. And I was so disappointed in that, I started telling them the family history right there at the wake. and that's how I got started doing this research. So it's been since 1984 that I've been doing it. And I've gotten a long way, but not all the way. I have run into some roadblocks that I'm still working on, and need access to some specialists in some certain areas to kind of close the books on the things that are still open.
I know it's hard, especially when you find some of those roadblocks, but that's why I love talking to people, because two things you said that were actually, we kind of have a little bit in common. My dad's father's family, they're from Naples, and they were also sort of, landed gentry, as you say. His grandfather was an attorney, and I think mainly because his wife's father and his father were attorneys, going back to the mid or early 1800s. But his father, my great-great-grandfather Sorrentino, he was a pharmacist. So I found that to be really, really interesting. When you find those birth records and you see like pharmacists in Italy in 1830, it's kind of funny. And then I never knew this until I started doing the research that my grandmother's great-grandfather, so my third great-grandfather, was Count Giacomo Piramalo from Montebello Ionico in Calabria. And he married into the Cracciolo family, which just goes back to forever in Naples. So I never knew I had Calabrian. And, I never knew anything about the Sorrentino family, hardly anything at all about them. So that was really interesting.
It's really amazing that in your case and mine, instead of experiencing the American dream the way you've always heard it should be, where you come over here with nothing and then you work your way up to something, in my family's case, and it sounds like in yours as well, it actually happened the other way. We started from some point of prominence and then actually, became, regular folks when we got here to America, if I can put it that way.
Well, yeah, that's true. And in my grandmother's case, when I started finding this out, I said, well, why did she come? Why did they come here? Mm-hmm. And I found out that her aunt, Maria Piramalo, was here 10 years before. And she apparently married, I'll say a commoner, at least he didn't have any nobility as far as I could see. So that's probably why they came, and they came over in 1905, and my grandmother came in 1915, and eventually my grandfather with his brother opened up an embroidery business in New York City. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. My mother's family was the exact opposite. They're poor farmers from Bari, and they came because my grandfather had served in the Libyan War, I guess in around 1911 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And when World War I was breaking out, my grandmother told him, "You're not going to war again. You left me all behind with everything. We're going to America." Mm-hmm. and that's what happened. Yeah. So I know what frustrates me, but what frustrates you the most?
Oh boy. There's quite a list. So it starts, I guess, with the Antonati website. I don't know how much the folks out there have used it to do Italian research, but when I started my research, it didn't exist. And then as they started populating that site, everything was very slow coming up. None of it's indexed. So it's really difficult to sift through unless you have a lot of time on your hands. And I found Family Search to be similar. I did start using that. I did go to a local LDS location here to do some research and ask for some help. But that, too, is not indexed when it comes to Italian records. So you really have to have the time to sift through everything to find what you're looking for.
Yeah, I agree. And, Antonati was out there.
It's really amazing that
I know they're adding more
in your
records,
case and mine.
You're right.
Sometimes instead of experiencing the American dream the way you've always heard it should be, where you come over here with nothing and then you work your way up to something.
What was
in
your
my
most
family's
amazing
case, and
discovery?
it sounds like my most amazing discovery was that when my grandmother was telling me all of these fanciful tales as a child, they were real. We are related to Duke Teodoro Lopez, or, when their name changed when they came to Italy, it turned out to be Lopez. the princes of Aragon, I guess, changed it to Spanish because it was easier for them to deal with. We're not Spanish at all, but it ended up being Lopez. And he is actually the son-in-law of the last Byzantine king of Morea, Andrea Palailogos. And his daughter is my ancestor, Eugenia Palailogos.
So yeah, and I have them going back too. Mm-hmm. And I think I sent you an email on that saying that not a direct line back into where you are, but probably a cousin of sorts or something like that. And that's through that Caracciolo line where we have that.
Yeah. That's where one of my roadblocks is now, as a matter of fact. In all of the research that I've done on the Byzantine Empire, and I've tried to reach out to university professors and all sorts of folks that potentially could help me with this, to no avail. But I understand from my reading that Andrea did not have any children. At least that's what all of the documentation I've seen tells me. But the document that my cousin did, and I'll get to him in a moment because he may be helpful to others in their genealogical research. But he actually wrote a book on our family history because he volunteers at the Italian State Archives in Cosenza Province. And he obtained a document through the archives that's actually the first land grant that Duke Lopez got, the first in our family that's written down. And it does record Andrea as having two daughters, Urgenia Palailogos, who's my ancestor, and another daughter who married one of the czars of Russia.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So I'm now trying to validate that piece of the story, and am looking for any assistance that I can obtain in doing that research.
So now your cousin, he lives in Italy, yes?
He does. His name is Giuseppe Baffa, and he started a little company of his own that he calls, in English it's called Thieves of Dust. So he has a website out there called Ladri di Polvere, and my Italian's very bad, especially with a New York accent. So that's what Thieves of Dust translates to in Italian. And anyone can reach out to him at thievesofdust@gmail.com and send him an email either in English or Italian if you want to do research on your ancestors in southern Italy. And he'll be happy to help. And he is connected to the archives, so getting at those documents that you either don't have time to find, as I had, because they're not indexed, or that you're just frustrated with not being able to read in Italian, he's able to bridge the gap for a lot of folks.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to get in touch with him.
My most amazing discovery was that when my grandmother was telling me all of these fanciful tales as a child, they were real.
But also, I'd like to get him on one of these calls too, so that would be great. So I'm definitely going to reach out to him.
He doesn't speak English, just so everybody's aware, but we communicate with Google Translate. So if I send him an email, and we translate back and forth so we can speak to each other.
Yeah, that's what I do too, and possibly I could get my contact on with him or something like that.
Everybody's aware, but we communicate with Google Translate. So if I send him an email,
I think you mentioned before that you did get some professional help, and I'm assuming it was the same reason that I did, because you had a roadblock that you couldn't solve.
Everybody's aware. Oh, well, actually, it wasn't that so much as I was frustrated with my inability to get access to the information that I needed. And that's still the case in many ways, because even on Antonati, if you look any later than 1910, you're not going to find a lot. And I've still had trouble finding my great-great-grandmother's death certificate for that reason. So as they put more information up, I'm sure I'll see it. But getting access to the older records in a timely fashion, since I was working at the time pretty long hours, was really difficult without help. So I did reach out to someone to help the whole process go faster.
One of my frustrations too with the Antonati, and I'm sure you've come across this, is when they are indexed, like if you do the search the names, the spellings could be anything.
Oh, yes.
My great-great-grandmother was from Switzerland, and her last name is Mohr, M-O-H-R, and there's at least 3 different spellings of that on the Antonati that I kind of just found by accident.
Yes.
So my final question is, what does your family think about all your research and what you found? I mean, my family goes from "you're out of your mind" to "wow, you found that? That's something."
Mm-hmm. No, it's more the latter. I think my family is very grateful that I've taken the time to do all of this research. My mother, in particular, was under the same impression that I was as a child. All of this stuff is fanciful fairy tales, number one, because
Right.
we never had any validation of what we were hearing as children. She didn't either. And there was always some mystery with her growing up because she did have the access to my great grandmother that I didn't have. You know, she died in 1959, so my mother did have a lot of time with her to ask her questions. And one of the things you always got in response was, "I don't want to talk about Italy. Let's talk about something pleasant." so so my mother always wanted to know why her grandmother didn't want to talk about where she came from or what happened in the family or why she left to come to America, and she always shut it down. It was always a big family mystery that she wanted to have solved as much as I did.
Yeah, that's it. That's interesting too. I mean, I was younger, not so young when my mother's mother passed away, and I didn't ask her a lot about Italy. My father's mother, we always had her. In fact, I still have it. Her father's calling card, which kind of got me started with everything. But when I started doing the research and talking to my cousins that live with her, they said, "Well, Nanny, that's what we call my grandmother. She used to tell us stories that her cousin was the princess, and we just thought she was some, crazy old lady, telling us that, her cousin was a princess, and she was, and her grandfather was the prince. So
Yeah,
there you go. Okay, well, I really appreciate it, Karen.
you're very welcome.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook in the Italian Genealogy group or at www.italiangenealogy.blog.